This is the Corrections Forward podcast from the American Correctional Association. Here's your host, Rob Green.
Hi, I'm Robert Green. I'm the Executive Director of the American Correctional Association. I want to welcome our colleagues around the country and around the world to really the first episode of Corrections Connect and Corrections Forward, what we're doing. We're going to have a conversation today around one of the most vexing issues that the corrections field is wrestling with. And I've learned from the two gentlemen that will be speaking with us today, we don't use the word crisis in corrections frequently. The drone attacks, the current state of affairs around drones in our correctional facilities has been an incredible crisis to our correctional leaders, something that started nearly 15 years ago. And we are really fortunate to have two individuals with us today. I'd like to introduce each one of them before we get into the questions and answers and their presentations. Secretary Ricky Dixon, Secretary of the State of Florida, also President of the American Correctional Association. And also joining us today is Tyrone Oliver, the Commissioner of the State of Georgia. Both of these directors, these leaders, corrections professionals, have been on Capitol Hill no less than 6 times talking about this issue, raising the platform, raising really the need and what the crisis is across the field of corrections. We're going to start with you, Secretary Dixon, and you wrote an incredible op-ed recently that has gained national attention, titled "The Escalating Threat of Drones in America's Prisons." And there's one line in this that really draws the reader's eyes as to how big and how problematic this is when you say the consequences are not hypothetical. Mr. Secretary, if you could give us an overview of the way drones are a threat to your system and what you're hearing from your colleagues around the country, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Drones are one of the most significant threats we face in corrections. It's not a Florida issue or a Georgia issue. It's a national issue that's impacting the profession in a very negative way. It touches every aspect that we work toward keeping our facilities safe. It mitigates those efforts to such an extent in multiple ways. For instance, the drugs that are coming over our fences with the use of drones obviously are having a negative impact both on behavior, violence within the system, and overdose deaths as well. So this is a real life and safety issue that we're experiencing when we try to take care of the health and well-being of the inmate population. It's a life and death issue in terms of keeping our staff safe from violence and the populations that we supervise. And drones are used also to bring in cell phones into our facilities, which facilitate the ongoing criminal threats to the community. So it's not just an issue that's impacting corrections behind our fence. It's an absolute threat to the community as well. A lot of organized crimes are orchestrated from behind our fences through the use of cell phones that are delivered by drones. And the irony in this is the very cell phones that are delivered by the use of drones are also used to coordinate additional drone drops of various contraband. So again, a significant threat, and I just appreciate ACA and others that are pushing so hard to address this threat to corrections.
Secretary, I don't think people really understand and get the sense that understanding how our prisons are built, we're built with strong perimeter fences and strong surroundings, entrance and exit points for our staff. But did you ever envision in your career a threat where we would have to protect from the skies and above? We're not built that way.
No, I didn't. Prisons were built decades ago for the purpose of keeping people in, not necessarily keeping threats that face us today out. Again, a significant amount of resources and effort goes into the entry points and things like that. But the game has changed with the advent of various technologies, specifically drones in this case. we're not built to mitigate that threat. Without the mitigation efforts that we'll talk about today, that's needed with the law change. Technology exists now to help us fight this, but we need legal action or legal authority to mitigate these threats.
And I think the average individual perhaps doesn't realize as well that the current state of the law in the United States is we can currently detect a threat, but we can't mitigate. And mitigate means some level of activity to engage that drone, that device, either keep it off of our property or be able to make sure that it lands, comes down, and we're able to stop that threat. So right now we're detecting, but we can't mitigate. Is that correct?
That is correct. And these devices move in and out so fast that detecting alone is not the answer. In many cases, even when we are fortunate enough to detect the drones with various technologies we have, it's too late, and we don't find the dangerous contraband that that entered our secure perimeters. So the ability to mitigate and to remove that threat as it crosses our property lines is paramount.
Very good. Well, thank you for kicking us off, Secretary Dixon. We're going to move next question and next comments from Commissioner Tyrone Oliver in the state of Georgia. And Commissioner Oliver, I'm familiar after watching you testify many times and watching the information that you've provided to the American Correctional Association, but more than that, just our profession. You have really helped us show some fairly shocking video around what's coming into our systems. And many may not be familiar with Operation Skyhawk. Would love for you to tell us a bit about that. And again, another one of the things that stands out in reading and watching you present on that issue, am I to understand it is the largest RICO case in the history of the state of Georgia?
That's correct. The largest gang RICO case in the state of Georgia history. So kudos to the team there. Did a phenomenal job. One thing about Skyhawk, it started off with a traffic stop. And we had a traffic stop of an individual, a lady. She had a drone in a vehicle and some contraband, tobacco and some cell phones, things of that nature that were wrapped. That's commonly used to deliver packages into the prison. We didn't know we had a drone problem. This was back in 2022, I believe. We didn't really know we had a drone issue at that particular time until we started to download the drone and realized that she was flying. There was a female that was arrested in this case. She was flying drones in all of our prisons across the state of Georgia. We have 35 state prisons in Georgia, and she was flying every single one of them. And then it kind of started from there, where we started trying to tie her back into who is she connected to. So that's what came Operation Skyhawk. We connected her back to several inmates, and then also the inmates got connected back to an individual named Robert Schwartz out of the Metro Atlanta area, who was actually providing the drones for these flights, not only for her, but several more individuals across the state. And that investigation expanded outside of Georgia to several different states up and down the East Coast, where the same drones that we confiscated in Georgia were flying in several other states up and down the East Coast to deliver contraband inside of prisons and jails in those states as well.
It's an amazing program, and what our audience is going to also get to see is some of the confiscated drones, but these are all sizes. These are not small Best Buy kind of drones. These are large, sophisticated drones that some, as I understand it, are almost autonomous in their flight ability.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that came out throughout the investigation. They're not like these handheld drones that you can see if you buy at Best Buy. These are what we call unmanned aircraft. They are huge drones capable of lifting. One of the drones that we actually seized in this case was capable of lifting, carrying a payload of 220 pounds. That's a human being. To Secretary Dixon's point, we're talking about, we have secure perimeter fencing of that nature that keep people in. Well, can you only imagine this drone comes in over our unsecure airspace and lifts up a human being outside of that. I mean, that's the capability that these drones have without some mitigation authority could possibly happen. Not to mention the amounts of contraband coming in, cell phones, weapons, um, tools to take apart the very prison that we call secure. They're now flying in these tools to be able to take apart the prison, the locks, the lighting, so they can hide this contraband in. And so we arrested over 180 people. And the significant part of this case is that we confiscated over $7 million worth of contraband, and that's prison value. That's a lot of money. So it can tell you how lucrative this business is when it comes to drone drops inside of prison across this country.
I like the focus on statistics, and I think again, Commissioner Oliver, you had some numbers around the number of cell phones.
Yeah, so cell phones in Georgia, we confiscated last year over 15,000 cell phones in the state of Georgia alone. The year before that was 13,000. I'm not sure what that number is right now, but I think we're pushing close to that number so far this year. So cell phones continue to be an issue, continue to be a problem. Our motto and what we've been pushing on Capitol Hill and anybody who will listen to us, some of our stakeholders, is kind of to Secretary Dixon's point. You know, if they can't communicate, they can't coordinate. So if they can't communicate, they can't coordinate drone drops, they can't coordinate, run their criminal enterprise outside the wires. I mean, we have sophisticated criminal organizations within our systems that are continuing to wreak havoc on our communities out from inside our prison walls due to contraband cell phones that they're getting in via drone.
Well, I applaud you both for the work that you're doing. Let's move towards this idea now of the discussion of the legislative regulatory situation we're in today. We know we don't have the ability to mitigate, but I've watched both of you testify before Senate Judiciary Committee. I've watched you do White House presentations, and again, both of you extremely masterful in how you have relayed the message. Secretary Dixon, can you give us a sense of really how you feel the reception has been, and what your hope is with legislation that we hope to have before Congress? What do you hope to accomplish for our profession?
Yeah, I hope we move from a position of just monitoring and detecting to actual mitigation. I'm so appreciative of the Senate and House members that are responsive to this, and some are. I would repeat what I said in my Senate Judiciary testimony, though, that I can't stress enough the sense of urgency that we should all have. I asked there, can you imagine if we were watching the evening news tonight and learned that a group of gang members or whomever dropped weapons and multiple weapons off inside of our facilities, and if that weapons drop resulted in either mass escape or mass chaos and the type of threat that could potentially occur in the community, it's a miracle, or it would be very surprising if that doesn't happen at some point. A lot of us in the profession are surprised it hasn't already happened. So that's coming, and several of us, including Commissioner Oliver and others, are trying to sound the alarm and make sure that people understand this is nothing to play around with. These things are happening to certain extents already, and it's going to get worse if we don't really move forward with a sense of urgency to get this legislation passed.
Let me ask you another question. We've heard the idea around possibility of pilots, and as the three of us know, we were 3 years ago, we were virtually not on the radar with some of the regulatory organizations that were talking about airports and talking about stadiums and large events and critical infrastructure, and we were able to, as an industry, the American Correctional Association, each of you, along with our colleague Brian Collier and many others, but quite frankly, any organization representing professional corrections, we've elevated this need. That we need mitigation, and I think we went from not being on their radar to now watching each of you present on Capitol Hill and watching the legislators listen to you, and then when they see the video, they see the pictures, they're like, wow, we had no idea. And again, I think both of you have been extremely masterful at that. We've heard some focus around perhaps starting with pilots. Could you give us, Secretary Dixon, what your opinion is and thoughts around pilots at this point and where we are in this crisis.
Yes, it's too late for pilots, and pilots is so ineffective at the speed in which we need to move to be addressing this. It is don't know how to word it any differently than we already have in several of those settings as we try to express the urgency. But this is critical. As you said, we're careful when we throw around the word crisis, but this is a crisis. We're fortunate that something really significant's not happened in our nation already as a result of this, the ability these individuals have to interrupt our secure perimeters. But again, not just me, not just Commissioner Oliver, our friend Brian Collier, former Secretary of Texas, and so many others have been sounding the alarm. And we really hope somebody listens and the legislature moves quickly. And they are. They're working toward this end. But we need to keep up the pace, and pilots are not the answer. And this is something that every corrections facility across the United States needs instant access to the mitigating efforts to combat this threat.
Secretary or Commissioner Oliver, would you like to comment on that as well, please?
Yeah, I agree. I think pilots are not, it's not going to be the answer. We need the mitigation authority now. The things that the fentanyl that's coming in, the amount of fentanyl that's coming into our facilities, the amount of weapons, drugs, cell phones. I mean, you can imagine the public entrusted us to keep their community safe. We can't possibly do that if we don't have that mitigation authority, because these criminal organizations are wreaking havoc in our communities. They're scamming people through these cell phones that are getting into the drones. They're organizing and creating and still putting out hits on the street, getting people killed and hurt from these drones and these cell phones getting in. We cannot wait for a pilot. A pilot is not the answer. We need the authority right now to be able to mitigate and reduce that threat in our community.
And Director Green, if I could add as well to support
yes,
that,
sir.
Not just
please.
the threat we've described, but the interruption to the rehabilitative programming is off the charts. We're in the business of corrections, correcting behavior, working on education, programming opportunities where we can release individuals that have a chance of success. And the amount of contraband and drugs coming in our systems is causing us to frequently lock down the compounds, disrupt the programming, not to mention the cell phones that are being brought in and are used to extort family members. We have a number of cases in every system I know of where inmates call family members and demand rent, as they call it, for another individual to live safely in a location, or demand payment for their loved one's protection. And oftentimes they'll assault them and send them pictures by use of cell phones that come in through drones to extort family members. So just a myriad of criminal activity that takes place because of these devices.
I think that is just such a great point. Again, I've seen you both make it with our leadership. I've seen you make it in presentations and workshops, whether it be at a conference in front of legislators, in front of our colleagues, that this is really interfering with the effective delivery of programs. And perhaps it was one of you or Brian Collier that there may be weeks where you may have half of your productive day of education and workforce development and other things interrupted by having to shut down a facility to search it, because while you may have had the ability to see a drone coming in, you didn't have ability to mitigate it. And if it hits and makes a drop, you have this absolute obligation to keep your facilities safe, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about another thing, if I may, Commissioner Oliver. We've heard people talk about death and the potential of loss of life around a drone attack or a drone issue at any one of maybe a public event or anything of that nature. You can't turn on the TV without watching how drones are being used across the country and in other parts of the world. But are we having deaths right now that you can contribute to drones?
Definitely. I mean, when you think about the amount of fentanyl, the amount of drugs that we see, the ecstasy, the methamphetamine that we see in Georgia, 99% of that is tested positive for fentanyl. That's what we've confiscated. So that's a lot that's a lot of drugs coming in being contributed to, the deaths being contributed to some of the overdoses due to drone drops. It's one of the things that keeps me up at night because we talked about the contraband coming in, but you're talking about you know the evolution of drones and what they can do to our system. How can they wreak havoc? What if they were weaponized in such a way that they're able to, you know, do some real harm to our infrastructure? Um, that's one of the things that that kind of keeps me up at night. We had a drone last month or a couple of months ago, was actually on fire and crashed into our one of our facilities, one of our dormitories, and actually caught the dormitory on fire. We had another drone that was on fire and caught a house on fire before it got there, crashed into a house in a neighboring neighborhood and caught a house on fire. Luckily, everybody there in both instances were safe. No one was harmed. But can you imagine something else being used to on our infrastructure to be able to another weapon of a sort to be
So,
able to use on our infrastructure?
so it's not a stretch for either one of you that to say that drones are contributing to death within our
No,
system.
what would be misleading is to say that people are going to die because of this threat, because people are dying. That is a fact, in not only in Florida systems, but in systems throughout the United States. Just as Commissioner Oliver mentioned, from the fentanyl and the drug overdoses that come in through drones. And what's hard to quantify is when homicides increase and suicides increase, so much of that activity is related to drug activity and interruptions sometimes in drug activity. Like you said earlier, if we intercept a drug delivery, we have to lock the compound down for days and weeks at a time. Oftentimes, when one gang is the recipient of those intended drugs that don't make it, there's violence that results from that interruption. So the deaths that are already occurring because of the drone activity is off the charts.
I love the way you said that, Secretary Dixon. I mean, those words. It would be misleading to say it wasn't, and that is a very direct statement. So as we begin to wrap this first edition and this first episode up, we know we are on the cusp of legislation before our colleagues in Congress. And how do you feel about the chances and the opportunity after, wow, 2 years of work on this? And again, I know both of you, along with Brian Collier in Texas, recently retired, our colleagues in the Correctional Leaders Association, and public safety, major county sheriffs, have been very involved in presenting with us on this. This has been quite a coalition of effort to just bring awareness to what we started off talking about, a true crisis in the field of corrections. Secretary Dixon, as we wrap it up, how you feel about where we are right now? Do you believe we're on the cusp of change and opportunity?
Yeah, I am very hopeful and optimistic, and it's a matter as I put it before. This will be fixed. This will be resolved. It's just a question of do we resolve it now before something terrible and catastrophic happens, or do we make the mistake we so often make in this profession and others and wait on something really bad to happen before we do? As I mentioned, things are going wrong every day, but we are only it's only a matter of time before something really embarrasses one of our systems and puts a lot of lives at risk through major catastrophe or criminal activity related to drone drops.
Thank you, Secretary Dixon. Commissioner Oliver.
Yeah, I think I concur with everything that Secretary Dixon said. I think one of the things that, just to reiterate, highlight, is that we're thankful for our partners and our Congress and congressional leaders up on the Hill, and our state senators and all the committees that we've been meeting with. I think they hear us now. Like you say, we weren't on their radar 3 years ago. We're on their radar. We're making a lot of ground. But to Secretary Dixon's point, we have to keep our foot on the gas and get this across the finish line. We cannot wait. We cannot afford to wait for something bad to happen before we act. We need the authority to act now.
I want to thank you both for the work that you have done. Correctional professionals around the country, you're serving each one of them, every woman and man that works in these facilities, you're contributing to their long-term safety, the safety and security of our communities, and the safety and security of the very individuals that we are charged with protecting inside our system. And I've watched you both do it. For our audience, corrections is on the front lines of this drone threat every single day. These malicious drones are increasingly being used. They're bypassing the physical security of our systems, as you have heard today, and they're delivering contraband. They're delivering weapons. They're delivering drugs, cell phones, and other items that pose a threat to us, while also facilitating a continuing criminal enterprise for many. They compromise our safety inside and out. And we are just so thankful to have both of you on the front lines helping to push this. We're very thankful for all of our allied organizations that have been involved in these presentations. And I would tell our audience, stand by, get involved, watch. You're working in corrections, please let your thoughts be known. And I want to thank both of our guests once more. Secretary Ricky Dixon, the great state of Florida, also the president of the American Correctional Association, and Commissioner Tyrone Oliver, the great state of Georgia, and our president-elect. We could not ask for two better, more influential, and incredible leaders to be pushing this agenda for us. Thank you so much, and thank you to our listeners.
Thank you, Director Green. Thank you.
Thank you.
Corrections Forward is a production of the American Correctional Association.